Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And this week we are going to talk about a really important topic. It's not as light, perhaps, as some other topics, but it's something that's super valuable, especially for women and in particular young women as they head back to college. Many have already gotten to their dorms and people are moving back in, but this is something that's going to be important and a lesson that will carry, I think, throughout their lifetime. So normally I like to start off my episodes with something related to wine, especially if it has something to do with a topic. But as I said, this is a more serious topic. We're going to talk about young women and how they can protect themselves, self-defense, being alert. And so I think it's important. I am going to mention something related to alcohol because I think it's important for us to note, especially, as parents. I know you're not naive. When people get to college, they drink. And unfortunately, the statistics do show that over 50% of sexual assaults usually involve alcohol. And it can be the perpetrator drinking, the victim drinking, or in many cases, both. So it is important that especially young women are aware of certain things and they get some tips. So my guest today, I won't prolong anymore. I want to get right to him because he knows a lot about how to help young women and women of all ages with his business. His business is called Tsunami Self-Defense. Welcome, Robert Thomas.
Thank you. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. And we see here, let's get a good look at that logo there. Lift up that shirt a little bit. So before we get too serious, Tsunami Self-Defense, here we go. And yes, watch out for this guy. He can be found on all social media, his business, Tsunami Self-Defense. So please check out Instagram, check out Facebook. You have a YouTube channel, I believe.
Yeah, YouTube channel. Yep.
Okay.
Tsunami Vision.
Tsunami Vision. Okay. So again, if you can, and we're going to give a plug and I'm going to let Robert talk about this in a minute, but if you can't quite make it to a workshop just yet, check out the content that Tsunami Self-Defense posts because there's a lot of great value in that. But let me turn it over to you, Robert. We've spoken before and I should mention, or I'd like to mention, oh gosh, there I go with that should word. I am trying so hard to get it out of my vocabulary because it does have a negative impact on how you feel about things when you're saying that you should do them. But Robert and I know each other from improvisation, from comedy improv years ago at the Comedy Dojo. So we shared a lot of laughs, a lot of good times, and that was a lot of lighthearted stuff. And I am so impressed, I have to say, your business, Tsunami Self-Defense. I remember when it was in the beginning stages, and I see all the posts you have. You're doing incredible workshops, such valuable programming that you're doing. So why don't you first tell us a little bit about that before we get into more of the information and the tips to help young women?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. The business we started, this is our 11th year. We had our 2020 was our 10th year in business. And of course it was mostly in shutdown, lockdown, COVID mode. So we're sort of like back on track now in 2021. As you said, it was a tiny little business, and we're slowly growing and gaining steam, moving in the right direction. The reason is, I believe, two main reasons. One, we are unique to the area in how we present material and the training itself, and that is because largely based on the fact that we're principle based. Our movements, our applications, even our awareness tips, our situational awareness techniques are very principle based. They're not a technique. This is not a martial arts class. That's one of the main reasons. The second main reason is I would never be here 11 years in business if not for the amazing women who work alongside me. The women who help me teach classes. Every class is team taught, co-ed approach to teaching, and they truly are the rock stars. They're the best. And I wholeheartedly, I stand back and I watch them teach portions of the class, and the phrase empower women has never been more true than in our training in the Tsunami Self-Defense classes. So that's the girls great. And the women who teach are
That's wonderful. And I'm sure that helps to put women at ease, right? So it's like, obviously you have a knowledge base and you've been training for years, but to have other women there to help facilitate and they can relate and really help out.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I start a lot of classes with saying to the people in the room, all the women in the class, that like that I'm the least qualified person in the room to talk about catcalling, to have experienced some of the things that most, if not all, the women in the courses have experienced. So to have a great team of female instructors alongside me, teaching right alongside me, is invaluable.
Excellent. And it's nice that, a lot of people will forget the people who've helped them. And, it's great to give them a shout out. And I love that empowered women, empowering women, because we need more of that in not just this arena, but every arena. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Can I say one other thing about the
Oh,
classes?
yes. Yes.
All of what I just said is true, but we do have co-ed classes. We teach some guys only classes, especially weapon defense, blade and stick and edged weapon defense classes. And then we have a great growing, more and more popular all the time, children's program. We teach kids safety and self-defense, and even a senior program, senior citizen program. So we do cover the whole spectrum. It's a lifestyle of personal protection.
That's great because, now today we are going to focus on young women going back to college. But like you said, it's a lifestyle. It's, we really all do need to own our own safety and be educated, be aware at every age.
Yeah. Yeah. Our hashtag is be your own first line of defense. We hashtag that often. Be your own first line of defense.
Okay. You cut out there and I apologize. I'm just going to ask you to repeat that.
Sure, no problem. What I said was that we often make a hashtag and a saying. Our motto is be your own first line of defense. So that's something we believe in all aspects to make it a true lifestyle.
Excellent.
Especially
Okay.
with young women going off to college.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into that. And I again, we know that everyone, men and women, do need to be aware and protect themselves. But the reason I wanted you to address specifically younger women is now it is the end of August, and some women are already back at college and others will be going in later. But it's not just about the first weekend, right? Or the second weekend. This is something, especially I feel like if they're away from home, because it's new surroundings, it's a lot of unfamiliarity. It's not having your support system, your family, maybe your closest friends. So young women going back to college, even though we know mom and dad might not like the idea, the drinking, the parties, this is something that happens in colleges. And I mean, I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. And, granted, maybe they'll only try it once or twice and they're, everyone's a good kid and they won't do it again. But it is part of college. And it often happens that, there might be some drinking going on. And unfortunately, when, maybe a young woman drinks, maybe she's not aware, she's maybe lightweight, she might not weigh that much. So the drink might affect her quickly. There's so much to be concerned about, but we don't want to put fear into anyone. We just want them to be prepared. So let's talk about that first, that idea of, okay, they're there in college, they're going to try get to know people, socialize, and go to some parties, and some tips and ideas that you'd want to share about that.
Sure. So what you're describing is the red zone. The red zone is typically the from freshman orientation weekend, or that first, check-in weekend of the campus semester, to the first Thanksgiving or winter break. That's the time in a young woman's life where she is most susceptible or vulnerable to sexual assault or sex crimes. Now, that's not to say that it can't happen your junior or senior year, of course. We've had a great deal of grad students and masters, people going for their masters, tell us, I'm in your class now because of something that did happen my freshman year, and now they're ready to start training. So, but that first semester of college is the most vulnerable time for a young woman. So yes, drinking, most people partake, whether that's a few people in a dorm room or a big kegger rager at a huge basement party. There's a wide variety of different types of parties, of course. So things to look out for. It sounds like the pieces of, or the little tips and advice that you hear all the time, but it is so critical to never leave your drink unattended. Never try a drink that you did not see poured or served in front of your face, in front of you. Don't accept a drink from a stranger. Now that's tough at a party because sometimes that's what's happening. They're handing out drinks. Oftentimes, I have a cup in my hand here. If this cup is handed across the bar to the bartender, even in a house party fraternity basement, Oftentimes the keg is behind a bar and the cup goes below the surface of the bar, is poured from the tap below the surface, then handed back to the people at the party, the girls at the party. So in that time when your cup's out of view, who knows what else is put in that drink. But I do want to say on that note, there's four major date rape drugs that we talk about. Three of them are sort of pharmaceutical based, but the number one largest, biggest date rape drug is alcohol. And most people don't consider alcohol itself alone, just booze, to be a date rape drug. And it is. It's the most readily available, legally obtained, largest widespread date rape drug out there. Anything you take into your body and ingest that alters your state is a drug, and certainly alcohol lowers the inhibitions, will have memory recall, fuzzy details the next day. So certainly just alcohol alone is a date rape drug. And when they add other pharmaceuticals, then we have even a bigger worry on our hands with roofies and others.
Yeah. And, something that I think I heard you and I talk about another time, you talked about this idea of why the perpetrator would be giving alcohol. I mean, it is a party, if it's a party scenario, then of course a lot of people would be drinking, but there's also the illusion or what people see. And unfortunately, this idea of like, if anything ever did happen and taking it to trial, it's like, oh, well, we saw her dancing and drinking. That is a problem, right? You said perpetrators do that on purpose, obviously.
Sure. The perpetrator knows that the court of public opinion is going to be saying all the things you just mentioned. Like, she was dancing. I saw her dancing on a tabletop. She was playing beer pong all night long. She was dancing on the floor. So all those eyewitnesses to the accounts and the events of the evening will say she was readily drinking and she got drunk on her own. And then oftentimes the rapist will say it was consensual when it was not. So and most people don't realize also that if they use an agent like GHB, which is by far, GHB is the worst of all the drugs. That is the predator's choice. GHB can be put into a cup of coffee or a bottle of water or Gatorade and have the same effects. Alcohol could amplify the effects, could speed up the process, but a predator could roofie or date rape drug any beverage. But alcohol is that masking agent for the double effect. Increases the rate in which it affects the body, but it also changes the details of the night. Predators know that if you're out drinking the next morning, your recall of the night before's details will be fuzzy, will be a little, questionable, and that's to their advantage. Sadly, it's sick to think like that, but that's to their advantage in if should this go to a legal battle.
Mm-hmm. So one thing you mentioned, a couple things there about the actual drink itself, watching if they can, making sure they see who pours it, what gets put into it, not setting it down, and then like going out and dancing and coming back to it, just like either empty it out or just toss it, whatever. Yeah. Don't leave it unattended. Another thing young women can do, go out in a group, right? Or have someone in charge of kind of being, in charge of them for the night and staying sober.
Oh, that's a huge tip. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We always say, I always tell people, have a den mother, have a one person in the group that is going to stay sober. Make a pact early on in the semester when you're all sober and in your right frame of mind that, one girl every night or one person in the group, could be a co-ed group, where one person stays sober, and we have to listen to them when they say, no, let's leave, or don't go with this guy. You have to abide by it. And that's a huge, not only a designated driver, but just someone to sort of like watch the scene of the night. Have that sober person to be your guidepost, your guideline. Because I will say this too. One of the other things that predators do is they'll try to isolate you to a secondary location. So if there is let's say a dance floor, or where beer pong and other games are being played, and there's DJ booths or whatever, oftentimes if someone is targeting a girl, they'll try to get them to a secondary location, an isolated place. So they might say something like, oh, there's just lame ass beer here. I have shots back in my room. Let's go, whatever they use, whatever excuse they use. That's the way to separate from the herd. They want to take you away from your safety net of your group of friends to get you to an isolated location. Going to the bathroom could be an issue. I mean, not so much college house parties or fraternity parties, but even there was a huge spike in sexual assault cases of college age women in New York City a few years back. And what was happening was there was a trend. It was a sick trend that predators were waiting until a woman goes into the restroom. And when they're in the bathroom, that's where they're being sexually assaulted. Because if you think about it, what's the one room in the bar or restaurant the owner of the establishment can't legally put a camera? Right. So predators knew that, and they were going into following girls into the restrooms. And I'm talking like little mom and pop restaurants or little dingy bars in the city where there's like oftentimes a narrow corridor, a small little hallway to get to the ladies' room and men's room. And that's when the assault was happening, away from all the people. Isolated places is a huge factor.
Yeah, that's where we need to think about too. Under knowing surroundings, not going somewhere you don't feel comfortable, or if you went, then you'd have maybe no clue how to get back to your dorm room or whatever. So knowing where you're at and planning, and like you said before too, with the whole den mom idea, if the person says, no, that's it for the night, let's wrap it up, you should really be prepared to listen for that.
Yes. Yeah. Listen to your den mother.
Yeah, well, and there's a reason you do that, right? Because like we said, when you're drinking alcohol, no matter who you are, even, it's not just young people, but it changes, your awareness level or your things that, your memory and your, being able even physically to take care of yourself. So it is so important that one person who's not, hasn't had anything to drink and has their full wits about them can do that.
Right.
And I should say, and we're not trying to, obviously neither of us is condoning or saying, drink under 21. We're not saying that, obviously. We're just being realistic, right? So that's kind of the idea that, like I said, I drank when I was underage and I went to college, I drank. There are people who drink in high school. And so we can pretend it doesn't happen, or we can be realistic. So this is just meant to prepare young people. And you mentioned your workshops before. So what is kind of unique too, you had said that you actually create scenarios. So you're not just showing them moves and giving them tips. You're actually putting them in a situation to get them prepared so that if they ever were in it, they'd know how to get out of it. Is that right?
That's very true. Yeah. I like to tell people, I mentioned at the top of the show that we were not a martial arts class. One of the big reasons why is we teach 50% soft skills, 50% hard skills. So we teach a lot of fighting skills and defensive measures, jiu-jitsu and karate. There's a blend of many different martial arts, but we scenario base them. We give role plays. We'll actually mock up dorm rooms. We have a great facility that we use at Roll Call in Scranton, where we use a shoot house, or we use their big mat training area to role play a ton of different scenarios. We've even done classes outside in the parking lot, around the cars, going to and from your vehicle, which is another worry spot or concern. So we do teach that. And then on the soft side, the soft skills, we will go over a great deal of concepts and principles. I think we mentioned, and we talked one other time about if we could sort of like chunk information into small categories. One of the things we teach is the different types of violence and the different types of predators. So in the moment, you could, work through and troubleshoot some of the crime that's happening. So you're working through the assault or the crime. There's two types of violence. I'll say them real quick. It's super simple. You could put all violence on planet Earth into these two categories. It's either social violence or asocial violence. So simply put, social violence wants an audience. That's the type of violence where like the guy, like, what are you looking at in the bar, that kind of stuff, pushing and shoving, or even girls. There's a lot of caught on camera female fights going on these days. A schoolyard bully, an elementary schoolyard bully is social violence, but so is terrorism. So is Al Qaeda. Like, the Taliban is social violence. They want to be seen causing that violence to prove a point, to gain status. That's what social violence is. Asocial violence is lurking in the shadows, the predator sneaking, or the college party guy who's trying to slip something in your drink and get you to an isolated location. They don't want to be seen doing that. It's very under the cover, like sneaky is very asocial violence. So that's something we really, really try to teach people. Once, if they're in an encounter, if they find themselves in a dangerous situation, they can start figuring out how they need to respond, because the response could change depending on the scenario.
And I think you mentioned that, and I think we talked once before about this idea. I had brought up this idea of a lot of times as women, we read articles about like fight like hell to get out of a situation. And you had mentioned, again, it depends on the situation, right? We talked about if they're after you personally, or are they after your purse or your phone or your necklace or something. So if you want to just address like the differences and how your responses should differ a little.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. What you're talking about there is the different types of predators. We just talked about the different types of violence. This is types of predators. So there's resource predators and process predators. A resource predator wants your stuff. They want your money, your jewelry, your electronics, your vehicle. Okay. And they want to, steal that for whatever reason, probably turn that into drug money, but they're looking for a resource. A process predator wants to harm you, do something bad to you. So the guy in the bar fight is a process predator. He's not trying to beat up the other guy for his wallet. He's in some sort of like macho, crazy crap going on in his world that he needs to prove something. Rapists and serial killers are certainly process predators. So if we know that if somebody grabs a hold of you from behind and says, "Give me your purse," they maybe have a knife or something. That's a resource predator, a social crime. So they want your things, they want your purse and the contents in it. So I would advocate you give it up, let them have it and run away. If you can't, like, give it and run. Don't fight over an object, an iPhone or something. Don't fight over that sort of stuff. If it's a process predator, they may not care how much money you offer them. They're more interested in the act of ... whatever their intentions are.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing the difference and training the difference under duress, we run stress.
Oh, okay. We lost your audio there, Rob.
Sorry, I had to look there. We do situational training, stress drills, stress inoculation drills, all to sort of like get people to critical thinking and in the moment responses. That's what our training is about. So we'll run, like I said, parking lot dangers, or we'll mock up a college dorm room or a party, but we'll even do elevators, stairwells, things like that.
Wow. So you're giving them, that's why this is so valuable, because we like to think we know what we would do in a certain situation, right? And sometimes you take these workshops where I took one years ago, and of course, it's always a joke, but it's like, go for the groin, and that was one of the moves, hit them in the groin, or a sensitive area like the eyes, or even the nose, or the windpipe or whatever. But you're going beyond that in the sense of, okay, so someone, just like schools have trained with school shootings, you've seen that, or terrorism, different kinds of drills. So this is someone is practicing what they would do in that situation. So hopefully they'll remember that if, God forbid, this were to happen to them.
Yeah, you're right. And now I don't want to startle anyone. We don't do that on the first night.
Yeah.
There is like a little bit of hierarchy, prerequisite learning going on for sure. But we do get to that, and rather quickly, some of those drills. But that's exactly right. Whether it's we don't do active shooter training, but that type of training, that thinking along those lines, certainly we do that. Yeah, for sure. And the feedback has been incredible from what I actually had a girl who graduated from college a few years ago who told me, just knowing that sort of like resource predator, process predator stuff and how to respond, the preemptive, pre-incident indicators that we teach, saved her from what she felt was going to be a very bad scenario before it got physical. It was creepy and weird, but it didn't get physical because she tuned into those pre-incident indicators we taught. So that's a win. Like, that's great. I don't need you to be Jackie Chan. I don't need you to be, doing all these crazy John Wick moves or Charlie's Angels. Get away from things before an incident. That's a win. That's great.
Yeah. And that's got to be also very kind of like gratifying for you to hear, because you're helping, empower these young women, empower people, whoever takes the class, so that they can have a good outcome, a healthy, happy outcome where yeah, you don't want to be robbed, but you also, nothing can replace your personal safety. Right.
Amen. Yeah, and that's why we do it for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's I just want to talk a little bit about I know you also do other training as far as weaponry and things, and I think I've mentioned to you, as someone who runs, I go usually by myself, which is may or may not be the smartest, but I run on the roads that I'm familiar with. I know. It's like I basically your checklist, it's like wrong, 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 wrong.
Um,
But I had bought mace years ago,
uh,
and then I got it. I let it sit. It was in my car. And then one day I'm like, oh, do I even know how to turn it on? And it was like, I couldn't even really get the cap turned. And then the
right.
one, it like, I sprayed it, but it kind of fizzled. And so then I didn't even carry it with me. So I know that you do training with mace. And to your point, these things can be valuable, but you have to know how to use them, right?
Yes, amen. That's exactly right. And any tool that you can use to keep yourself safe, I'm okay with, but I don't love all that stuff. And here's why. Like you're describing, many people purchase something and then they think, okay, now I'm safe. If you purchase an item and then it's in the bottom of your purse or clipped to your JanSport book bag and it doesn't, you never train with it, you've just purchased an item with a false sense of security. That's kind of all it is. Now, if you're going to have mace or pepper spray, and I say for walkers and runners, especially for fitness, I say carry it on your outermost layer, strap it to the arm, the waistband, in your hand itself. They have somewhere like the canister has a handle on it, so it fits in your hand. It has to be in the palm of your hand, and it's a thumb trigger, which is awesome. Let it be seen. Don't try to like hide it. Let it be the visual deterrent that it probably would be. If somebody sees it clipped to your waistband or your arm, maybe they won't choose you. So that's a win. That's okay. That's good. But stun guns, electrical, prods and all that, and pepper sprays, and even firearms or Kubatons, little pocket sticks. They're great, but you have to know how to train with them. If you're going to go the pepper spray mace route, I would say buy one with the inert version. There's like a dummy canister with just water in it and not just the irritant. So you could practice, hit a target, put a piece of paper on a tree or something in your backyard and practice hitting with the water canister. You should know how to use this stuff. And then all of those items, firearms included, if you have them and you don't know how to keep it and fight with it in a stressful situation under duress, and someone could take it from you and use it against you, it's I know people have firearms and they have really expensive paperweights.
Mm.
they
Yeah.
they can't keep it in the fight, and when someone's trying to pry it from their hands, so you have to learn the physical and mental skills always need to be first.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where your classes come in. Again, and like, it's funny how, and I won't say funny, I mean, funny in an ironic way, what we spend our money on or what we pay attention to. And sometimes it's just a matter like, maybe hopefully a conversation like we're having, someone hears it, a parent, and they tell their daughter that, hey, check out some classes, if they're away at school, look into it. Cause a lot of times the campuses will have safety kind of training and awareness and things like that. Maybe even, local law enforcement comes in, just anything that can help them, because we spend money on all kinds of entertainment and like $10 coffee drinks and all this stuff. And it's like, but at the end of the day, our bodies are so important. Our lives are so important. And yet we might not spend money on learning, how to train ourselves and how to be prepared.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for saying that. We keep our classes very fun, they're fun, they're interactive. We joke around a little bit. We have a great time with them. But I do want to say we also travel to colleges and universities. If anyone's hearing this and wants us to visit them, we do corporate workshops. We'll visit campuses and colleges, universities. We've gone to, if the school, the larger school, whatever college or university it is, doesn't want us, we've gone to just the sports team at that school, or just this sorority, or just, we target, we travel to visit campuses or businesses, all over the place. Philadelphia, Harrisburg, New York, New Jersey, we've traveled to give those type of classes.
That's awesome to know, because even though we're kind of focusing our conversation today on young people going to college, as we said before, everyone needs this. And, I mean, there are dark, parking lots in corporate settings, in industrial parks,
Mhm.
and, yeah, as people, just as humans, we go to the grocery store, we go to places all the time where we need to be aware. And on that note, I wanted to transition into something you had said when we talked before about, we talk about this old notion of people waiting in the shadows. But the truth of the matter, I think you had said, is really that when people do get attacked, it's more likely to be someone that they know, right?
Yeah, you have a far greater chance of being harmed by someone you know than somebody you don't know. I don't like to start saying statistics, because then people like look them up and prove them wrong. But generally speaking, whether it's a stalker, type situation, someone who becomes infatuated with the person, or it's workplace violence, or an estranged family member, there's all sorts of crime can happen in a multitude of ways. And crime is, most crimes, not all, most crimes, but definitely sexual assault is in all income brackets, race, religion, creed. It is rampant throughout all. One of the things that we always tell people is, this is tough to wrap your head around, but as individuals, you cannot lower the reward low enough, but you can raise the risk. And what we mean by that is, you can't lower the reward for the predator low enough. You can't drive a shitty enough car. You can't dress down and look frumpy and have no makeup on and lower the reward for the assailant low enough. Bag ladies get raped. Homeless people get mugged and have to get beat up for their possessions, as minimal as they are. You can't lower the reward low enough. You can, however, raise the risk. You can do things, act certain ways, how you carry yourself, how you present yourself to the public. You can raise the risk for the predator. So you can't lower the reward for the predator, but you can raise the risk of them trying something to you. By the way you put yourself out there to the world. How you come off, your confidence level, your empowerment level, your observant skills. If people see you being that way, confident and observant, you're less likely to be targeted. Whether it's a known or unknown assailant, you're less
Yeah.
likely to be targeted. People who are in relationship violence, there's a self-esteem issue there. There's a relationship violence is hugely based on self-worth and self-esteem, and that's why we say self-worth, self-esteem, self-defense.
And you mentioned too before, I think this is kind of along those lines, even showing, if you're carrying like mace or whatever, even having it shown, because then the person might think, okay, that's a risk because I'm going to get possibly sprayed in the eye, or there's going to be people noticing and I could get arrested. So that's like, whoa, okay, that's risky. So making it more difficult, making it riskier for them.
Yeah, you're raising the risk for the predator by just, letting them see that stuff. Now, there again, I do want to say the one little thing to keep in mind there is if you have a very valuable tool, and you look like you don't know how to carry it, wield it, or use it, then you could be very vulnerable. And I'm talking mostly about firearms, very expensive edge weapons. If somebody's like, I've had women tell me, well, I carry a gun, I don't need your class. And if you look like, if crackhead Joe thinks he could take you before you can pull your gun and pull the trigger, then it could be the reason you're getting mugged, your expensive firearm. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Again, these are small probabilities. These are narrowed little niches, but it is not out of the realm of possibilities.
Right. And you've been in business a long time. So again, you're probably an example of maybe that you've seen a couple of times with that overconfidence. I'm sure you've run into it. And I mean, it boils down to like we said before, it's about protecting yourself and your self-defense, your life. You value yourself, and you need to make decisions like becoming informed, taking like one of your classes, being self-aware, being confident, knowing where you're going, who you're going with. And now with college students, to get back to that for a minute, they're going to be learning new things, new places. They're going to be meeting new people, and they don't necessarily know these people. So they might make some bad decisions as far as maybe the people they hang around, and that's unfortunate because they might want to trust them and just trust them off the bat, and it could be wrong. But you've said before too, I think you made the point to follow your intuition, though. If you do get a kind of bad vibe, listen to yourself, because there's probably a reason you're feeling that way.
Amen. Thank you for saying that, because you're 100% right. We believe it. Your intuition is your first level of self-defense, and women have very strong, wonderful, powerful intuition levels. Don't ignore them, listen to them. They're probably right. If we always say, if you think someone's a creeper or you think some place is not the best place to be at, you're probably right. Don't ignore that. Too many people have said in my own classes here in Scranton, like, I wish I listened to my intuition. My gut was telling me this guy was bad news, or I wish I listened to my friends. They told me they saw red flags and I ignored them. And unfortunately bad things happen. So your God-given gift of women's intuition is so powerful. Use it, listen to it, embrace it.
Yeah. And one other point before we close, and if there's anything, I'll let you close with some other thoughts. We had talked about this idea of, again, I think this kind of goes into what we said before about feeling overconfident. I talk about how I run in Scranton, and I'm from Scranton, and I'm familiar, and I know that can be a negative for us sometimes when we get too relaxed, right? When we go, oh, I run these streets all the time, and I know this neighborhood, and it's always great. It's safe. It's this, it's that. We can't just let our guard down just because something's comfortable or familiar, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think most people feel safe in their homes. The home is a castle, that sort of thing. But when we go outside into the neighborhood, you still have a sense of, this is my neighborhood. I'm from the neighborhood. And that's good because you probably are safe there. But a lot of crimes happen within a small radius of the home, right? Like purse snatchings and muggings and people getting beat up. Car theft happens close to the residence, within maybe a 20-mile radius. So sure, that's what, if you feel confident and familiar, you'll let your guard down more. That's when you need to be like alert to your surroundings, when you're very, very, very familiar and comfortable. That's when that little fine-tuned thing happens, where it's like that balance between the two. On that note, I've also said the same thing to people who have there was a group of young teenagers brought to a class once, and the parents brought them in, and then we taught the class, and I said, girls, this were like 13 years old, 14 years old. And I said, the worst thing that could happen is, let's say your parents tell you you're not allowed to get in a car with this group of guys to go for a ride, but you do it anyway. And then nothing happens. You have a fun time. It was cool. You had a great afternoon. It was fun. Wherever you're doing, great night out. It was a blast. You had a great time. No incident occurred. You're training yourself then to be like, oh, I'll do that again. It was fun the last time. And when we know it's a bad decision to go with somebody we don't know in a car, like to have fun, that's just one example. So like the more you discredit and don't listen to your intuitive nature, and you do things anyway, the more unsafe and less protected you are.
Yeah. So before we close, and I want to let you give another plug to where people can find you, but so what about, and I don't know, I don't mean this to be a tricky question, but there are people who are listening who might be like, oh, wow. So now you just have me so scared. You have me so worried. You have me so like, oh my God, I have to get my little girl from Drexel, bring her home, or from Penn State, bring her home. We're not trying to scare people, right? We want people to be prepared. What would you say to those people who are like, well, you're just all gloom and doom and it's not always this bad? What would you say to that, I guess?
I guess I would say this. We have the 4 P's of self-defense. We want you to be prepared and proactive, so you're not paranoid or paralyzed by fear. And there's 4 P's, 2 on the negative side, 2 on the positive side. And we're literally right there in the middle. It's the balancing act. And if you're too much, we don't want you to be paranoid or paralyzed, nervous to leave your home. We want you to go out in the world, experience the great life that's in front of you, but do so with some preparation and some skills to sort of, like there's a saying, have a plan, you work your plan. If you're not planning to, if you're not failing to plan, you're planning to fail. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So having a plan is the den mother. The talk with the girls who are, before we go out tonight, all right, I'm going to be the sober one. When I say it's time to go, or we're not going to go to that party, you have to listen to me. That's a plan. Have those plans, put them in motion, and listen to your instincts, and then you can go out and have fun. We don't want people paranoid. We want people prepared.
And that's a great answer, because again, we're not trying to scare people, but it's just like with parents maybe not wanting to think of their kids doing things because they're their little boy or their little girl and whatever. It's just being realistic, right? And just accepting. Sure. And like you said, if you have a plan, you're prepared, then you can enjoy life. You don't want people to be living in fear, because that's no way to live, right? But you do need to be prepared, be educated, be aware, be prepared, like you said, and have a plan, which is great. Yeah. So let's close with, I'd like you to just say where people you do a ton of great workshops, and you are available obviously to go to corporations, to go to universities. Where do you want people to check you out, and any closing thoughts? So I'll hand that over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. It was a blast talking with you. I love being here. So certainly you could look us up online, tsunamiselfdefense.com. The Instagram is at tsunami_self-defense. We have a Facebook page, Tsunami Self-Defense. Girls on Guard is one of our classes. Our most popular female-only class is called Girls on Guard. So if you're seeing Girls on Guard when you're searching Tsunami Self-Defense or Robert Thomas, that's us too. Girls on Guard is just one of our female-only classes. But no, please give us a shot. It is, trust me, it is not what you're expecting. And you'll have a blast, and I know you'll come away safer and more confident, from our training. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Robert. And for to Robert and to our listeners, I do apologize. We had a couple little internet hiccups, and my mic might have went out twice. There's his t-shirt for those who are going to watch this on YouTube, the video there. He's showing his awesome logo. For those of you who are listening, you're going to have to check it out on his website and check it out on Instagram, because all that great stuff is there. So again, I hope you've stayed with us. I apologize for technical glitches. I am still new to this, and I'm going to give this opportunity to disk Comcast, because I'm sorry, it's for what they charge, and using an Ethernet cable, I should not have these breaks in service. But hey, that is the world we live in. So thank you so much for joining me, Robert Thomas. Thank you for listening, everyone. This has been Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby, and you've been listening to Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. Please listen in September. I have a series starting, Fabulous 50s, all great women who are either much.